Oh, it's sticky?
It's sticky.
Oh, she don't hold on.
Oh!
All right, Bill. All right, good evening and welcome. My name is Mary, and I'm a librarian at the Fulton Public Library. First, I would like to thank everyone for joining us for this exciting evening. We are so incredibly grateful for the memories and stories that everyone has shared to help bring this book to life. The library would like to thank the very hardworking, dedicated Memoir Committee that met diligently to make this book a reality. I would like to recognize the committee members, Jim Papaya, Mary Kimball, Joe Abate, Joanne Butler, Caroline Chatterton, and Mary Hines. Thank you all so much. Finally, I would like to thank the Friends of the Fulton Library for sponsoring the refreshments for this evening. I want to let everyone know that the new Memoir Book is available for purchase for $20 and is also available to borrow at the Fulton Library.
Okay, so Mary Hines is part of our committee. Mary, our librarian, and I'm Mary. How many Marys do you have in one room? Not very often does this happen.
Yeah.
Jim and I are going to tag team tonight. We're excited about this night. We're very, very happy that we have such a great turnout. We weren't sure we needed to use this microphone because we both said we could talk loud enough, but I think maybe we will. Thank you all for being here. What I'd like to do, first thing, is to just set the tone. I'd like you all to just put yourselves in a little cloud, maybe close your eyes, think and pretend that it's the 1960s. For most of you, that will put you at anywhere between 8 and 15 years old. Maybe there are some of you that are younger and you would be just infants. But I want you to imagine, it's November, the moon is almost full, it's past dinner time, and the kids are in the street playing. That's what neighborhoods used to be like. In my neighborhood, my brother invented a game called Peter Panners and Captain Hookers. We played it by the hour, and the neighbors never cared. We were running through the yards, climbing their trees, leaping their fences, and they would help us. They would say, they went that way, they went that way. And we just had so much fun, and nobody ever felt like it was the wrong thing to be doing. It was neighborhoods. So what I'd like you to do right now is turn to the person next to you if you don't know them, introduce yourself, and pretend that you're in your neighborhood.
You grew up in Scribe. I'm trying to think of what else I can ask you. Okay.
All right. Who learned something new about their neighbor? Dave? What'd you learn? Or you can't tell us?
I learned that Al is not from Fulton. He grew up in Pennsylvania.
Where in Pennsylvania?
Dallas.
Oh,
You know, we had a song written about our town.
Dallas?
Dallas, Pennsylvania.
All right. Anybody else do anything they want to share? All right. Well, what we'd like to do is As Mary, the other Mary already mentioned, this is a group effort. We have a committee. We're going to formally meet the committee members here in just a second, or informally. But there was also a lot of people that contributed in one way or another. We're going to just briefly talk. I want to start with Kathy and Alina. Put Kathy on the spot. Kathy was a committee member until she moved away to be closer to her grandson. And Kathy, as we were finishing up the last book, she thought, you know, wouldn't neighborhoods be a good idea to do for a book? You know, with block builders and all the neighborhood initiatives that are happening, wouldn't it be cool for people to write memories? So Kathy, that idea, we ran with it. And I want to thank you for that. And also, Kathy contributed a memoir to the book too. Next, I want to mention Laverne DeLand. Laverne is here. And so one of the things that we try to do with the committee is to reach out to different people that each of us know, or that we know somebody who knows somebody, try to spread the word. And Laverne did a really excellent job of spreading the word. Laverne had her daughter, is she here? Yeah.
Her friend is Amy.
Amy, okay, Amy, hi Amy. And Amy and her friends.
Her brother and my daughter and son.
Right, were neighborhood kids growing up together. So they wrote like a group memoir about their neighborhood, which was really awesome. But that came through Laverne, as well as Laverne is a member of the Sunrise Rotary Club. Raise your hand if you're a Sunrise Rotary Club member. We've got a whole row of them right there. And I got to go to a Sunrise Rotary meeting, 7 o'clock in the morning, and we did a group memoir based on just the members of the Rotary Club. So that was kind of a unique way to put a memoir together, was people that are Rotary Club members talking about their neighborhoods. So again, thank Laverne for getting that started. I'm going to try to say the next name, Andrew Eusebio. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Andrew Eusebio, if you know Caroline Chatterton, it is the Fulton Library director. She's on maternity leave right now. Andrew is her husband, and he helped us a lot taking pictures and doing some research. We wanted to thank him. Also, the Friends of Fulton History, the Pratt House, and we have Tom Brown here, Laverne. Who else is? And Sue Brown is here. Any other Pratt House? Carol Fafaya, we know her. Kathy Delisle, right? Anybody else? Janet Weldon and Les are here? Okay. So, of course, the Pratt House is where you go to get your history information. So we were able to rely on them to help us with both reference information and photographs. And again, the Fulton Library staff, you met Mary. I don't know if you're regular library patrons. If you aren't, I suggest that you do that. The library is a wonderful resource, but whenever we needed to check old yearbooks or old city directories, things like that, the library has been able to do that for us. I also want to make a special mention of Carolyn Mosier. Carolyn's here, right? Right here. Carolyn, besides being a library member and interviewing Nancy Miller. Is Nancy here? Yeah. Oh, you're Nancy. Hi, Nancy. And by the way, a lot of people, I got your memoirs, but I never met you face to face, so if I didn't say hi to you, please come up and say hi to me later. Thank you so much. Nancy wrote about, no? Don't tell me. It's the water tower.
Yeah, well, it's.
What's that area where you live now?
Yeah, I live right next to her. The 6th ward.
Yeah.
Dead Man's Hill.
Dead Man's Hill. Okay, we all know Dead Man's Hill, right? Anyway, Carolyn set up an interview and then put that memoir together. And also did the beautiful front cover of our book, which we're going to introduce in a little while. So Carolyn did that for us all. Is CJ here, CJ Smith? CJ Smith is the DPW, I think the director or the commissioner, thank you. He gave us the wards, the city wards layout. you know, we all knew we grew up in a ward, but it's hard to know where one ward started and one ward ended. So CJ helped us out with that. And then we have the Sunrise Rotary of Fulton, which I already mentioned was their willingness to do that. So those are the people that helped us. Carolyn?
So when I was researching parks to get an idea of a cover design of any park in Fulton, did you know there are 19 city parks?
Very cool.
That's right.
And probably one in every neighborhood almost, right? All right, so I'm going to turn it back over to Mary, and she's going to do the next piece here.
We also want to thank the Friends of the Library for their participation for us tonight. They are the provider of all the refreshments that you see back there. Kathy's Cakes, she did a beautiful job, and I know you'll enjoy the refreshments. And I also wanted to thank Maria Fazzini. She's the president of the board for the library. She has been incredibly helpful in helping us set this up too. So our thanks to her. She couldn't be here tonight. Okay. This is driving. I want to introduce the committee, but before I do that, I'd like to show you our new book. It's under wraps here. I'm just going to tell you a little, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm just going to tell you a little bit about this book. We get together and it's so fun. We're working on one book and all of a sudden we'll say, what about this? What about this? And every member of our committee has their own ideas, their own opinions, and we get each other. We like finish each other's sentences. We kind of get inside each other's heads. So we were having a meeting and we were talking about this book, the neighborhood book, and we were throwing out titles, and I had this notion that we needed to change the format. And of course everybody looked at me and said, And I said, yeah, let's do it like a picture book so that it looks like it's different, it's new. And everybody said, oh, okay. So we went back and forth and we played with it. And Caroline Chatterton, our director, was wonderful in researching it. And Joe Abate decided that he could work with that framework for pictures, etc. And we just all kind of made it work. So our end result is beautifully done by Carolyn Mosier, and this is our new book. It is a treasure. It's just a treasure. So we thank each of you that wrote a memoir. We thank each of you that participated in any way, sharing pictures, etc. And Jim and I talked about this. We'd like anybody who wrote a memoir to stand, please.
Or raise your hand if you don't.
You don't want to stand?
Oh. So everybody with a hand up. There are 33 memoirs in this book, 33.
And we also want to acknowledge anyone who has written a memoir for any of our former books. So if you did write a piece for any of those, please raise your hand. You know, we say this so often. We're sitting as a committee meeting, and if it weren't for you, these books wouldn't happen, because you are the voice. We just put it together. We do the research, but you are the voice. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, it's wonderful. So we're excited. Okay, our committee members are Mary Hines, Joanne Butler, Jim and I, and Joe Abate. Mary, would you come on up?
Why me first?
Because you're closest.
Because you're the newest member.
Okay, yes, I am the newest member, and I kind of fell into it by accident. Meeting with Jim about a class that that didn't exist. And I ended up telling him a Fulton story, and he said, "That's what we're looking for. You want to be on a committee?" And here I am.
Thank you.
This Mary, we now have 4 Marys at the time. This Mary grew up in Scriba, but her dad used to run the Agway store. Remember Agway? Right? So sometimes when Mary was a child, I don't want to give her whole memoir away, but she would ride in with Dad, and that's when she met friends here in Fulton, went swimming in the lake, things like that. So very unique memoir. So let's bring Joanne Butler up now. Joanne, and before Joanne gets her, or as she's walking up here, I want to say what a privilege it is to work with you, Joanne. Joanne, if you don't know, is a fine writer on her own. She writes historical fiction.
That's right.
And Joanne, the research that Joanne does for the books is just phenomenal. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what you did for this book, Joanne.
That's right. Well, Jim knows I'm a history nerd, so he asked me if I would do ethnic neighborhoods and research that and write about them. So I had a great deal of fun with that. I researched out the 3 main groups of people who came over after the revolution, when the place was, the area was really getting settled in by folks from New England and Canada. So the Irish came over during the Great Famine. The Poles followed them. Poles and Eastern Europeans came over as a result of their war, but also recruited by the woolen mills here. And the last group was the Italians, who had their own wars that they were avoiding, but also a terrific earthquake in southern Italy, near Sicily. So I was just thrilled because I love to find out anything. And that's my thing.
And you also wrote a memoir.
Oh, I did. I did. I wrote.
Almonds.
Yeah, that's right. I wrote about the almonds. Close enough to smell the almonds, because my great aunt and uncle lived about a block and a half from Nestle's. I had a dozen of my family members worked at the plant over the years. My grandparents met there, but Uncle Henry worked in the almond room, and he told us about it. But one day he was ill, and he told his wife, "Hey, call over to the plant, call the almond room, and tell them that the almonds are done. I can tell by the scent."
Thank you, Joanne. Let's hear for Joanne. So we each take a piece of putting the book together, and my job is to collect the memoirs, kind of read through and edit them if they need to be edited, and then kind of put them in a book form. And boy, when I got Joanne's piece on ethnic neighborhoods, it was like, wow, I'm really learning some history here. So great job. So let's introduce Joe Abate. Joe, I would like to say, before I give you the mic, Joe, is the quality of the books that you hold in your hand, and you'll see the other ones back there, almost totally due to Joe Abate's graphic design, work with photography, things like that. But we'll let him tell you more about what he does. So Joe Abate.
I guess no, I have to come up with a compliment for you. I like how things take the worst for last. I've been on this committee since 2012 at its inception, and every day working with these people has been a pleasure. All right, that's a lie. 75% of the time it's been a pleasure. I will talk about the other 25%. Unlike a lot of people that work on the book and on the committee, I am not born and raised in Fulton, but I have lived here 40 years, so I consider myself Fulton's adopted son. So, cutting some slack on that. Over the years, I've written some memoirs and edited some, and done the layout of the book and the graphics and the photography. And that's mainly what I do now. Put the book together and assemble it. And we do it right.
Yeah.
What I'm going to do now is I have a slideshow with the pictures from the book. There's no graphic or text, so you won't know what they relate to. So you'll have to read the book to find out what they're about. That was very clever. We figured that we would do it that way. Also, there's no sound, so if you get bored halfway through, just sing some songs from 1968 Billboard Top 100 and you'll be fine. And I'm going to give it back to Jim and start the slideshow.
So it's about 12 minutes long, right? Did you get the lights down? You just taking the lights down, or?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, we'll see where those go. So we're going to watch this for about 12 minutes, and then we'll continue with the program.
That's good.
I just have to say that Dick Swerzik, Richard Swerzik, I was able to get his memoir just before he passed away. That's you, ready? Sandy's here. So I should mention that we also do country neighborhoods. This is Tom Frawley's neighborhood. Anthony Leotis here. Grew up on the Chase Road where I grew up. This is my dad building our house on the Chase Road. Is Jerry here? Jerry Tetro?
I'm representing Jerry.
You are?
If I do that picture with her,
Oh, okay, gotcha. Is that your dad? Is Mimi and Laboda here?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Mimi's got her story in there. Mary's family. Harry Cardinelli wrote this memoir about the Cardinellis.
My brother lives in Arizona, but he wrote a piece.
That's you, Mary.
I'm the cute one. This is on the back roof of my parents' house on 6th Street.
Barbara Lighthouse here. Barbara wrote her memory about Pratt Street. Randy Dempsey is here.
We had lots of discussions about the west side pool and what fun it was. Very nice, especially
Joanne's fan. Where are you, Joanne?
Second from left.
Glenda. Dave is here, Dave Ferris. Paul McKinney is here. Who's going to leave this running? So through the rest of the show, if you want to take another look. Boy, as I was watching those pictures, I was thinking, I wish we could talk about each and every memoir that people wrote here, because each one brings back memories. I do want to point out a couple just that came to mind. Anthony Leota asked, we should ask who the oldest person here is tonight, because we think Anthony's got everybody beat, right? Anthony, how old are you, or will you? Anthony will be 91 next month. Have you got somebody beat?
Ed Miller?
Oh, 91 this one.
91 last July.
Do I hear 92? Oh, that's great. Well, think of the rich memories these folks are sharing in their memoirs. So, just briefly, Anthony grew up on the Chase Road. I followed him several years later, and the memories that he has of Chase Road, of that neighborhood, which of course is developed with the soccer fields out there now, but brought back, taught me so much about that neighborhood. So I want to thank you, Anthony, for that. Let's see, who's here. Oh, I know. Beth Hill is here. Beth Hill Kovacs. She's mad at me because I just said her name. But Beth contributed our first ever poem as a memoir. She wrote a poem about West River Road? West River Road. West River Road North. Yes. So we've never had a poem before, so that was really, really great to do that. So Mary?
I just wanted to say that when we get together as a committee and we read your memoirs and we talk about them, it elicits for us memories, and sometimes we just get off on a tangent and names come up that we haven't talked about in a long time, and we laugh, we cry, people have passed, you know, Mr. Swerzik, we were so delighted to have his memoir before he passed, and it happens so often. And this is just a sidebar, but one of our books is about the veterans, and that was 2 books ago. But when we did that book, we interviewed about 60 veterans. And for Veterans Day yesterday, we realized that almost all of those gentlemen that we interviewed are gone. It was an incredible experience for us, and we're so grateful we did it. It was the most wonderful memoir book, but time passes so quickly, and so when we say to you how much we appreciate your memoirs, you need to know we mean it from our hearts, because our children and our grandchildren aren't going to hear these stories if you don't tell them. That's right. And it's just essential that they know what Fulton is like and what Fulton was like. It's always been a city with a future, and the future is up to us. So we need to give them roots. We need to give them those memories. So thank you for your memoirs. I appreciate it. We all appreciate it.
I did want to mention, as the pictures come around, you'll see Jackie, Klaus? Kleiss. Jackie, her father was Christian, and he worked at Nestle. He came from Switzerland, worked at Nestle. And Jackie has written about growing up on Forest Avenue. I think they grew up on Forest Avenue.
Yeah.
And do you remember? She said, well, she lives in Switzerland now, I think she's back in Switzerland. But she said she told all her classmates about this. Has anybody graduate with Jackie by your chance? Did you, Amy?
She posted it on Facebook.
She posted it on Facebook? Okay, great. I'll tell her that I saw you, that you were here. So I just wanted to mention that in case anybody showed up. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how the Memoir Project started. I'm going to keep it brief. And then we're going to hear 5 people who wrote a memoir. They're going to read a little excerpt. And that was really difficult to choose the 5. We tried to go to different parts of the city. So if we left you out, we apologize on that. Because all the memoirs are worth reading out loud. They're each going to read just a section of their memoir. But the Memoir Committee started in 2012. And it happened when I had just started out sort of working on my first book of poetry. I was working on a book about muck farms. And I said, something told me I needed to go to the Fulton Library and talk to the new Fulton Library director. Her name was Betty Monte. I don't know how many people remember Betty, but I think it was one of Betty's first days of work. I walked in, didn't ask ahead of time, did a schedule, just walked in, and Betty put everything aside, and she listened, and we talked. We talked for about an hour. I'm sure she didn't have an hour to give me, but she gave it to me. And I told her that I was really interested in getting people's memories, talking about history from a personal narrative point of view. And that was where the Memoir Project was initiated. And this program would never have taken off if Betty hadn't embraced it. And we're now on book number 7. So what we do is we pick a theme, and sometimes the theme comes from somebody that's in the audience. So maybe when the show's over today, come on up to one of our committee members and say, hey, this would be a great idea for a future memoir book. But I want to say that 4 or 5 books ago, Mary Kimball came up to me. She had written a memoir about classroom teaching, right? And she said, Jim, I know your next book. You need to write about veterans. I said, Mary, why don't you join the committee and we'll do a library book about the veterans. And that's how Mary got on board. So that's where our ideas come from. And so it takes about 2 or 3 years to put the book together. We do a year of asking people to write memoirs or be interviewed. Then we edit, put it together. Joe works on pictures and graphics, and that's how it goes. So we're, as I said, this is book number 7. So let's move it over to the people that are going to read an excerpt. We're going to start with Jean Niver, and I want to talk a little bit about Jean, because Jean, this is your second memoir, Jean, right? Jean Niver, when we first did this project, Betty and I thought, let's do classes, and we'll help people write their memoirs. And the first class that we did, Jean was in that class, and Jean, if you don't know, she's going to share a little bit, her parents owned Ciron's store on West First Street, and so she wrote a memoir about being a grocery store kid, and wrote a great memoir. And that class, some of the people in that class, let me mention some names. Betty Fittecaro was in that class. Valley News editor Vince Caravan was in there. Bob Green was in that class. Fran Sullivan was in that class. Really, really interesting group of people. So Jean, just, you know, we heard the new project about ethnic neighborhoods and neighborhoods. Jean offered to write, so she's going to read a little bit of her excerpt. So let's have a round of applause for Jean.
Oh, we forgot to. So this is, when you're up here, be careful.
208 West First Street, where my family lived, was more than just Ciron's meat market and grocery store. It was the hub of the Polish-American community. It was here that many local customers purchased babkas, rye bread, kugins, pierogis, Polish ham, hard candy, and especially homemade kielbasa. Growing up on West First Street helped me to learn the Polish language, even though I never was a fluent speaker. I could help many customers who weren't able to communicate in English. As a special bonus to learning the Polish language, the Christmas family Santa secrets, spoken in Polish between my mom and aunts, were no longer safe if I was within earshot. Ciron's kielbasa was a delicacy that became popular nationwide. Some customers bought and froze the sausage and mailed it to relatives throughout the U.S. During holiday season, 50 to 100 pounds of kielbasa was handmade and smoked daily. Quite a chore for a small hometown business. Our house on the 200 block of West First Street was nestled in between 4 residences and 4 commercial establishments, 3 of which were owned and operated by Polish men. Sidera's Bar, now Chubby's, was located at the corner of Voorhees Street. Paul Sidera ran the men's bar, while a fish fry business occupied the other half of the building. That storefront eventually became Paul's liquor store. My father's meat market and grocery store completed the businesses on that block. However, nestled in between the Polish-owned businesses was a dry goods store owned by Morris and Celia Cohen, a Jewish couple. Mr. Cohen drove a large green panel truck and sold his goods in the countryside. Quite a traveling salesman. The store eventually became Dowd's House of Flowers. The white bond bread wraps that had been in Dad's store to house delicious baked goods and bread were now painted black and used to display beautiful floral arrangements. As a youngster, I often visited the Cohen store in search of a unique candy treat that wasn't available at home. I was delighted to find a creamy taffy that was served in a tiny metal dish with a matching spoon, my favorite. The Cohens were my first acquaintance with a Jewish family. After Mr. Cohen's passing, Celia was employed at the Easy Bargain Center. Every night after leaving work at 10 o'clock, Celia would stop by to visit with my mom and even enjoy some Hershey's ice cream on a hot night.
Jean, I also want to thank Jean, because Jean, how are you related to Richard Swerzik?
He's my first cousin.
First cousin. So Jean was able to help me get connected to Dick and his family to get his memoir. Thank you. Randy?
A little aside about Dick Swerza, as the band director in high school, he, if he wanted to sound angry, and he would recite this Polish children's poem very fast and speak very angry. And he would say it in Polish, and everybody would think, oh, he's mad.
Can you repeat it? Gene, do you know it? Okay. All right, Randy Dempsey's going to be next. Randy's going to come up and read his memoir. Randy is a wonderful writer. Actually, he's, may I say you're working on a book of fables? He's working on a book of fables that are original fables with great morals for kids. I just got a chance to read it. So, Randy Dempsey.
I feel like Mr. Rogers up here, you know? I just wanted to clarify something. You had the ward map on the screen earlier. When I grew up, what is now the 4th ward was the 3rd ward. We had 4 wards on the east side of the river and just 2 on the west side. They redistricted things in, I think, around 1980 or sometime in the 80s. My neighborhood was located on the east side of Fulton, bordered on the north by East Broadway, extending south to Kiwanis, Kid Haven, and beyond to the sand pits. When I reflect on my childhood, I think about the activities that were specific to a particular season, whether it be spring, summer, fall, or winter. The seasons created the rhythm, while the everyday experiences created the melody and harmony. For example, summertime. When school ended for summer vacation, we could be found playing baseball at the Kiwanis Fields. Ralph Abbott, and I'm sure I see Dave Flanagan, Paul Tetro, and Tom Brown remember Ralph Abbott. Ralph Abbott, with the help from Len Earl, ran the Kiwanis baseball program. He umpired the games, but more importantly, helped us learn the fundamentals of the game. To illustrate this, it was not uncommon for Ralph to stop a game and help a troubled player out. In one such case, a boy squared the bunt, positioning his hand around the entire bat. Ralph stopped the game, showed the boy how to cup the bat, and lobbed a dozen or so pitches as the boy practiced the technique. Ralph resumed play, and the boy laid down a perfect bunt. Sometimes I think that it was better to have Ralph Abbott instructing us rather than a parent who had a vested interest. Ralph also sold soda pop from a cooler in the back of his blue Rambler station wagon. As Kiwanis Kid Haven didn't feature a snack bar at this early date, sodas were 10 cents, and we opened the tops using the door handle of the Rambler, which we didn't know about. Summer was also a time for fishing and swimming at Sharps Pond or the Oswego River, unbeknownst to many of our parents. Barges traveled up and down the river, and the crewmen allowed us to ride from one lock to the next. One day it was mentioned that a swinging rope was in the plans to be placed in one of the trees on the riverbank behind where the Red Roof Inn is located today. The boatmen, to the delight of the boys riding that day, donated one of their barge ropes. I believe that Carl Afrat, Mike Callan, and my brother Mike were somehow involved. The rope was affixed to a tree on the riverbank, and dozens of boys and girls enjoyed swinging like Tarzan for many years. We also built rafts of wood planks and barrels afloat down the river. On our way to our river swimming place, we sometimes received chocolate from the Nestle factory. We'd stand below the windows on South 4th Street, beg for chocolate. A worker's hand would appear out a window, and a gooey chocolate ball would be dropped to a waiting hands. It was usually 80 or 90 degrees, so in no time the chocolate had melted and was more like a syrup.
Thank you. That'll give you a flavor of what Randy talks about. With go through all 4 seasons in your memoir, right? Yes. Okay. So Glenda Abate, Joe's wife, but I knew her as Glenda Fry when we were in high school together.
French and fry, right?
Oh, French and Fry. Right.
How we graduated. Still French, Glenda Fry.
All right, Glenda Fry is going to talk about 5th Ward.
The neighborhood is the 700 to 1100 blocks of Utica Street. From the 5-way stoplight on 7th Street, up and down the hill, across Route 3, to the area we knew as Sharps Pond. It also extended 1 block to the south over to Fairgrave and parts of Cayuga Street to the north. My Aunt Edna, who lived down on Seneca Street, always referred to our house as out in the country. How's the weather out in the country, she'd say, even though we only lived 5 blocks away from her. As in many neighborhoods of the 60s, there was always a corner store where you could buy milk, bread, and other essentials without making a trip to the supermarket. For kids, it was a temple filled with penny candy, ice cream treats, chips, and sodas. At least once a day, we made a trip to Saul's and later Jay's store, where Utica and Emory streets meet. Sometimes we stopped on the way home from school or in the summer to take a break with a cool popsicle during the midday heat. We also had Gillespie's Dairy on Oneida Street right in our backyard. Some days we would make a trip there for ice cream cones or other delicious dairy treats. During the summer, some kids in the neighborhood organized muscular dystrophy carnivals to raise money for Jerry's kids. The MDA provided carnival kits to help the children get started. Most of the time, the carnivals were actually set up and run by kids without a lot of assistance from the parents. That probably launched a lot of entrepreneurs of our generation. There were posters tacked to telephone poles announcing when and where, hoping to lure kids from other neighborhoods to attend. At the carnival, there were games, contests, who could stand on their head the longest, and prizes bought from the corner store. There were also refreshments like lemonade, water, and maybe some home-baked goodies. It was a brilliant promo for the MDA, and all those dollars and coins raised contributed to a cause that kids could understand. Our neighborhood school was Fairgrave Elementary. The school had a playground and a track with plenty of open space to play sports games, and many times we would hang out there after school was out. There's also a big hill on the backside of the school on Broadway. During the winter, it was the best place to bring your sled or toboggan and fly down the hill, screaming and laughing. I took my own daughter sledding on that hill not so long ago. It is still a popular sledding spot today.
Yes.
So the next reader is John Darling. And John, you found us. Somehow you contacted me. How did you? Oh, come on. This is John Darling. How did you find out of our program?
I read it someplace that you were getting started on that, and I had done my own first 20 years, and I thought, well, maybe I had something that would help.
So John sent me he wrote a memoir of his life, right?
Yeah.
And I said, well, we'll take an excerpt of it. And so John's going to read a little bit of his excerpt, the famous memoir. John Darling.
It doesn't work. I guess you have to turn that around. Yeah, there we go. Well, my mom and dad bought the house that we lived in at 874 Oneida Street, the last house on the south side of the street going out of town. And it's, as I say, it was the last one. As you left the city, the yard around the house when they bought it was very small. The backyard and the side yard was part of a drainage ditch that took the water from the streets that would come down in and take it down to Waterhouse Creek. My father negotiated with the city, or more poignantly, offered the city the chance to dump the coal ashes in our backyard that they picked up from the residents. Eventually it paid off, and our yard grew to a pretty good size, leaving a smaller area for the runoff ditch. You can see remnants of that today as you travel along Route 3 from Broadway to Oneida. Look to your left, in the street level portion of the backyard is the grade level that was created back then. I spent many hours outdoors as the weather would permit, which was the norm for the time, the things that kids would think of to do would probably get our parents arrested for child abuse. One favorite was to climb a small tree, have a friend chop it down. There's, the thrill of riding that tree down to the ground. It'd sure beat counting clover leaves, that's for sure. For those adventuresome, there was always roller skating or scooter riding on the sidewalk during the summer. On the night of street, the road butts right up against the sidewalk, where during the winter, the snowplows would pile the cinder-laced snow from the street. It was hard to keep the sidewalk cleared as the winter progressed at a snail's pace towards spring. Once the snow melted, brooms would come out and the sidewalk would appear from under the cinder covering. I must say that the guys that shoveled the cinders off the trucks onto the street surface during the winter were one busy bunch, but they were happy when the spreader was purchased. Going up the street were the various Gillespie families and then the Gillespie Dairy. What fun it was to look in and watch the bottles being filled as they moved around on a clacking metal carrier. As each one was filled with the right amount, the bottle would move along and a paper cap would come down out of a tube with a funny little gizmo on the end and get pressed onto the neck of the bottle. The bottles would collect at the end and a worker would place them in crates to go to the cooler. I found out that I could get a little bottle of orange drink and put it on the tab, which at first did not mean a thing other than having a nice cold drink. However, the tab came and Dad and I had a conference with Mom officiating. The results were that it was okay to put a drink on the tab as long as I told them the same day that I had done it. I think that was to limit the number of chocolate milks and orange drinks that I could consume. I was proud that I was able to do this as the other kids were forbidden to put it on the tab.
Okay, so before we bring our last reader up, I just want to mention again, we do feature all the awards in the city, but we also do some country, people that grew up in the country, and that's sort of in the center part of the book. So we do try to cover any kind of neighborhood you grew up in. So we're going to end with Tom Brown, and when Tom submitted his memoir, he said, I didn't grow up in one neighborhood. I moved around a lot. So I won't give away the secret of how he shaped his memoir, but he did a really nice job with it. So we're going to end with Tom Brown. Tom?
For last, so that's before I start, though, I like to say one thing. There's a picture of Bill Gray here, and Bill was my classmate, and he sacrificed his life in Vietnam. So.
He did. His sister.
His sister Monica Gray wrote the memoir about him. Monica was in our class, but yes.
Yeah, he was in my South. Well, yeah. As Jim said, I lived in every single ward there is in Fulton. I lived in 16 different houses and I think 12 or 13 different wards. Moved around a lot, so. But, so I apologize to Jim for not having a favorite ward. If I had a favorite ward, it would have been West 3rd Street where Walrod Street School was. That was a wonderful time in my life, so. So what I did is I said I was growing up up in Fulton in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. It was like living in the city that had such a positive influence on my life. And it was like living Leave It to Beaver. Remember that show, Leave It to Beaver? Yeah, well, that was like life was for me growing up in Fulton, New York. I lived in several neighborhoods during my childhood. West 3rd Street North, West 1st Street, Cayuga Street, East Broadway, Pratt Street, Erie Street, Oneida Street, and many, many more. My education began in what was called the Chicken Coop. Anybody ever went to the Chicken Coop? Yeah. It was a building behind 4th Street School, and it was a kindergarten building. I started school as a 4-year-old. So I don't have too many memories of the chicken coop, but I do remember having graham crackers and milk. And learning how to tie my shoe. That was it. Eventually I went to schools on both sides of the Fulton, the east side and the west side, from first grade through third grade. We used to say west is best and east is least. So I attended, and we, as we graduated from Walnut Street in third grade, we would walk over to 4th Street and meet our brand new 4th grade teacher. And we had a real young teacher when I was there, so that was really nice. I spent 4th grade through 6th grade at Fulton Street School. My 7th and 8th grade years were in Fairgrave School. It was also an elementary school and a junior high school. Fulton Street was also an elementary school and a junior high school. So we had both sides with the junior high school at that time. After junior high, I spent 4 great years in Fulton High School, located on East 4th Street. Life was so much fun growing up in Fulton. I remember what was called the Dizzy Block. Remember the Dizzy Block? I was told that at one time Fulton had some 144 stores, and a great number of them were in the Dizzy Block. Stores on Oneida Street, 1st and 2nd Street, and Cuba Street were part of the Dizzy Block. Every Friday night, my mother, my aunt, would take me. She'd park her car out in front of McKinstry's store, never get out of the car, and watch people walk around the Dizzy Block. That's exactly what she did. But I can also remember a man that I believe lost both legs in World War II. He had a little cart, he had gloves on, and he would scoot around that Dizzy Block selling pencils for a living. So that was me growing up in Fulton, New York. I was everywhere, so thank you.
Tom, do you remember what you named your memoir?
Who?
Do you remember what you named your memoir?
No.
The city of Fulton is one big neighborhood.
It was.
Thank you, everybody. Those were wonderful stories, and I know that everybody that purchases a book is just going to enjoy every memoir that was written. At this point in time, we'd like to tell you that we try to dedicate our memoir book to someone. And this year, when we sat, it was incredibly obvious right away. We looked at each other and Linda Egan's name came up. We said, who could be more deserving than Linda Egan, who has headed up Blockbusters? And I did that on purpose. I do that. Block Builders. I always tease her. I say, Blockbusters? Mary, it's Block Builders. Block Builders, she has done an incredible job, and her committee also. So I'd like to read you the dedication that we wrote to her. To Linda Egan, thank you for your enthusiastic belief in Fulton's potential to enhance its neighborhoods. Your inspiration reflects the goals of our Fulton Library Memoir Project. So thank you to Linda. She couldn't be here this evening, so would the members of the Block Builders Committee that came in to represent her please stand? Would you mind? Just give this. Oh, thank you, thank you. So that brings us to almost the end of our program, and at this time I'm just gonna, well, Jim, here we are again.
Yeah. We need a new project.
Jim, I have a great idea.
Yeah?
Yeah, but
I'm not writing it.
I know. So if you're not writing it, who's writing it?
These people are gonna write it.
Our next memoir, we are so excited. We sat and were chatting, and at some point in time, I don't know, I think it was Ciaron's Market, and we got talking about Ingemels because my brother mentioned Ingemels in his memoir, and one thing led to another, and Jim said, I think at one point there were 74 small stores in Fulton. And I don't mean the Dizzy Block stores. I'm talking about little tiny markets, and you all know what I'm talking about. So we said, what a great idea. Well, that kind of snowballed, and okay, you're not writing it.
Right.
You're writing it.
So we're gonna, our next theme is gonna be neighborhood stores, neighborhood barbershops, neighborhood beauty salons. So any small, like family-owned or one-person business in Fulton, if you have memories, or maybe you worked there, or frequented there quite a bit, we would love your memoir. So as luck would have it, a gentleman, I'm going to say, Tom Sincata. Anybody know? I know the Sincata family. You know Tom Sincata? He wrote to me about some reason, and we were emailing back and forth. He said, "Yeah, my dad had a little store in Fulton." So I said, on Buffalo Street. That's right, 513 Buffalo Street. So Tom has already written the first memoir. Okay. His dad's name was Anthony or Tony. 513 Buffalo Street. He was known for his fresh cut meats, and as Tom wrote his memoir, he said he'd come home from school and often find his dad and friends playing poker or pitch at the front cash register. So the other thing I want to show that Gene, I don't know if you remember, you gave me this, Gene Nyber, but this is a receipt or a slip. What do you call this? A receipt from Ciaron's store. So, you know, this will be an example of the kind of images and pictures we'll have in there. So that's, what do you think of our new idea for?
Bars.
Bars?
That's another book.
That's a whole other book. That's a whole other book. By the way, I did, Mike Otis, I want to thank Mike. Mike, just raise your hand again. So when we start the process, it's kind of daunting. Like, how are we ever going to get enough memoirs to make a book? And Mike was the first person. He responded. We put something on Facebook, and Mike, you wrote a paragraph or two about the neighborhood that you grew up.
Yeah, the dead end of West Second going south, it was all Polish.
Yeah.
We got in because my mother was Polish, otherwise it was.
Yeah.
And they were duplex houses to this day, and they were all originally associated with Poland's.
Yeah. Didn't you mention something about people squeegeeing their
The
driveway?
neighborhood used to squeegee his driveway when it rained. They were kind of frugal, but loving and generous.
Yeah, yes. So thanks, Mike, for starting off the project. Who thinks they might have an idea about a neighborhood store or a neighborhood barbershop? You don't, if you raise your hand, you don't have to, you're not committing to write it. I'm just wondering if, Paul, you've got something, Joanne's got something, Shelley, all right, Sylvia.
You know, when I was a little girl going to St. Mary's, the Moons had a bakery. And I was sure my whole life, I think it was my husband who finally convinced me that it wasn't true. I thought they were the reason you had half moon cookies.
Okay. Oh, are they? Oh, so speaking of that, we have lots of refreshments. Friends of the library supplied those. Mary from the library, who opened our program, is going to be selling the books there. So the new book, that the neighborhood book, is out for $20. The other books are $15. If I may also mention, I just helped Mount Edna Cemetery do their history. I brought some of those books. Those are $20, and that money goes directly to Mount Edna Cemetery, so that'll be separate. If you'd like to buy a copy of that, those will be back there too. Does anybody else have any?
If you have an idea for our next memoir book, you can contact any one of us. You can contact the library. You can write it and leave it at the library. You can go on the website. Make a connection somehow. don't let your memories go out the window, please. Write a memoir for us. And share what you've learned tonight with somebody else, and maybe they have a memoir about a store, a hairdressing place, a barbershop, whatever. Please, we'd love it. Thank you.
Thank you to all the memoirists.